With some new faces and new realities, the Arab League gathers leaders for the first summit since the Arab Spring. But with many leaders absent, how are the changes sweeping the Arab world impacting divisions and alliances in the region? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Sami Zaidan. Yet another Arab summit, and for the first time since the US-led invasion, it's being held in Baghdad. Well, the summit takes place in the aftermath of major political upheaval brought about by the Arab Spring. But has this further divided an already fractured Arab League? With Syria at the forefront of disagreement, Arab states might be forced to shift their alliances. We'll be discussing this in more detail later, but first let's take a look at the main issues that have traditionally divided Arab leaders. Well, there's relations with the West and policy towards Israel. They've often been quite a divisive topic. How to deal with Iran has also been a controversial subject. But most recently, the Arab Spring appears to have magnified the divides. The most glaring example was Libya, of course. While Qatar and the United Arab Emirates supported military intervention, others like Algeria remained staunchly against it. Splits also played out over the crackdown on protesters in Bahrain. While some GCC countries sent troops to back the government, countries like Iraq were critical of authorities there. And of course, we can't forget Syria. Qatar and Saudi Arabia favour a more forceful approach to removing the president from power, but others like Iraq and Lebanon argue outside intervention is not the answer. So is the Arab Spring widening the Arab divide? Well, to help us answer the question, we're joined by our guests. In Baghdad, Saad Almuttalibi, he's a member of the State of Law Alliance. That's the coalition led by Iraq's Prime Minister. He's also been an advisor to the Iraqi National Security Council. In Kuwait City, Fahad Shulemi, a retired colonel in the Kuwaiti Army and president of the Gulf Peace and Security Forum. And in Beirut, Joseph Kechichian, an independent Middle East analyst and columnist for the Gulf News. Welcome to the show, gentlemen. If we could start with Mr. Almuttalibi, is the Arab neighbourhood becoming even more divided now?
Well, thank you very much. What can I say? Arabs have always chosen to divide themselves according to different issues. But to be fair and honest, I have been watching this summit for the last 3 days, and I do see some common agreements among the attendees, at least. Some Arab countries chose to stay away from Baghdad for whatever reason they have, but those who came were very clear and very loud in their call for a type of unity or a unity of decision. At least let's speak about the rights of the people and not the rights of the states, as it has been.
It sounds like you're almost an
summits.
optimist, Mr. Almuttalibi. Is that because Iraq is hosting this gathering, or do you really see signs of unity in this time that everyone's talking about division?
Well, to be honest, let's look back a little bit on history. Arabs left Iraq in 1990 after the vicious invasion of the previous regime to our neighboring country, Kuwait, and the massacres that the Iraqi army under Saddam committed in the Kuwaiti cities. So the Arabs left Iraq since then, and it has been a very, very long time and long awaited for the Arabs to return back to Baghdad. So this is not just a summit for Baghdad, it's the summit for the return of the Arabs into Baghdad, and Baghdad welcomes all our brothers back to their second home in Baghdad. Right. It's not a matter of optimism, it's a matter of reality, looking at things in a real perspective. We have almost a common agreement, a majority agreement on Syria. We have a lot of understanding of how to strengthen or to create a kind of a united Arab forum, at least from an economical and tourism point of view.
All right,
fighting terrorism.
Let's bring into this discussion, if we could, Mr. Kechichian. Do you agree with that analysis going on there, that there are signs of unity emerging here? I mean, the Arabs may have returned to have a summit in Baghdad, but there's plenty of other issues that seem to be dividing them.
Well, it's nice to be optimistic in life, but I'm afraid that this is way out of line. The Arab world has never been more divided than it is today. This is very regrettable, of course, since we all wish that there was a clear decision-making that was taking care of the needs of the peoples of the Arab world, but this is far from reality. And the best evidence for this is the fact that so few heads of state have really bothered to actually attend this meeting in Baghdad. The absences speak really loud at this point, and even though I personally think that it's wonderful that the president of the Comoros and Lebanon and others are attending, but where is the king of Saudi Arabia? Where is the ruler of Oman? Where is the president of the UAE? Where is the president of Algeria? Where is the ruler of Egypt? Come on, I mean, I think that one has to be very honest. The Arab
but the
world
point
is
which Saad made,
divided.
Mr. Kechichian, that the fact that we've got the leaders of Kuwait there, in Iraq, of course, as we know, the two countries fought a war. Is that a positive sign? The fact that they're apparently able at least to agree on issuing some kind of statement on Syria?
No, this is a wonderful opportunity, I think, for the Sheikh of Kuwait to actually go to Iraq. And in fact, I personally think that the good thing that's going to come out of this particular summit is the fact that Iraq is back now into the Arab fold, and the presence of Sheikh Sabah in Baghdad is an indication of that. This was a golden opportunity for the Kuwaitis, and they were not gonna waste it. And I think that this is credit to them.
Okay, let's bring Mr. Shulemi into the discussion here. The hot topic right now that seems to be the one that's dividing the Arabs the most is, of course, Syria. Where are we heading on that? Are we heading ultimately to two camps? The let's overthrow the government or supply and arm the opposition, and the let's not do it camps?
First of all, I would like to compliment on my two colleagues who participating on the program. Second thing is I want to compliment the Iraqi government. I think having a summit in Baghdad is an achievement for al-Maliki government, although there are many security concerns, and this is not the best way to discuss it, I guess. But mainly regarding the summit number of leaders who attend, on average, Arab summit mostly comes between 9 to 17th. The Iraqi, I think, were on the low average, which is 10 heads of states. The issue, I think there is some disagreement.
But Mr. Shulemi, let's move on to the substance of why they're disagreeing. And it's been said one of the basic things are over disagreements over Syria, disagreements over the balance of power or the alleged Iranian influence in Iraq.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of countries are staying away.
I think, Sami, you are right. In fact, we have two major obstacles on the Arab relations. The first is Iran and Saudi Arabia and Iraq and Bahrain and United Arab Emirates. The GCC, some of the GCC countries consider Iran as a big player in their backyards, a big player in an intervention in their domestic affairs. Example for that, Bahrain accused Iran, Saudi Arabia accused Iran. There is an Iranian occupation on UAE islands. So this is one side. The other side is the issue of Syria. Saudi Arabia and Qatar and United Arab Emirates is being a hardliner. In fact, it's not a hardliner because there is the GCC bloc were able to succeed on Yemen case, and that's the initiative of the Syrian is mostly identical with the Yemeni case. The problem is Iran is supporting Syria, and the Iraqi situation were hesitant until the last minute. What I saw in the summit opening, I think many people agreed that we should stop the violence in Syria. The Tunisian president were very clear that Assad should step down the power and follow the Yemeni model. In conclusion, I think the GCC viewpoint, adopting the Yemeni model will be the best choice.
All right,
for that.
Let's go back to Baghdad.
Although the file went to Security Council.
All right, let's go back to Baghdad and once again to Saad Almuttalibi. You were talking about signs of progress and unity, but as Mr. Shulemi was pointing out there, couldn't we say that perhaps your government itself is a symbol of the Arab disunity when it comes to the influence of Iran, whether that's a problem or whether that's something positive in the Arab world?
Well, I mean, if there are any evidence of Iranian intervention in Iraq, I would like to see some of that. You know, I live in Iraq and I work in Iraq, and to be very honest, some of these calls are rather naive. Iran is a huge neighbor to Iraq, and we have 1,200 kilometers of common borders. And we do have to consider this large neighbor to us. And in a way, and you all know that we had a vicious 8-year war with that neighbor. We do not want a repeat of that. We want to have a balanced relationship with Iran. We want to have a balanced relationship with everybody else. Iraq will never be part of any local alliance or any regional alliance or a pact that would be against another pact.
And do you think that's going on? Let's lay the cards on the table, Mr. Almuttalibi. Do you think, from your perspective, from Iraq's perspective, do you think some Arab countries are going too far in making an anti-Iranian alliance? And let's call the shots here and name the names. Are you talking about Saudi Arabia?
To be honest, there is an American plan to kind of surround Iran. Unfortunately, Saudi Arabia took the call, the American call, but the mistake they did, they called for a sectarian divide. Unlike the Americans who are talking about political differences, which there is nothing wrong with that, we have political differences with Iran, we have political differences with other countries, but we do not want these political differences to be turned into a local or wholly sectarian divide, which will only enrage the area and increase the feud that already is there in the region.
Very quickly, before I go to Mr. Kechichian, I want to bring in Mr. Shulemi there, because I saw you shaking your head in disagreement. Are GCC countries not building this anti-Iranian alliance, which is inflaming the situation unnecessarily? And of course, Kuwait is one of the GCC countries.
Well, in fact, we feel bored from the story that is we are following America, and America is giving us the instructions to implement any American agenda. I'll give you facts. There is an Iranian intervention in Yemen, Houthiyyin. There is an Iranian intervention in Bahrain. There is spies cell in Kuwait. There is a threat to close the Strait of Hormuz. There is a threat to cut the hands that will commit aggressions against Iran and who support that aggression. This kind of language.
Let me bring in Mr. Kechichian into this. You've made it very clear there, the other side of that argument about Iran's presence or influence in the region. Joseph Kechichian, when you look at the situation, let's look at some of the countries which are being mentioned here. Bahrain, of course, that had protests during the Arab Spring. When we talk about Syria now, Yemen, is the underlying factor there the disagreement over Iran and its role and whether it's playing a role in that? Is that what is at the core of the Arab disagreement over how to handle the Arab Spring?
There are two major currents in the Arab world right now, and it cannot be clearer. On the one hand, you have the perception that Iran, as a non-Arab entity, is increasingly interfering in domestic Arab affairs. Naturally, Arab countries, the vast majority of them, with one or two exceptions, are allergic to this kind of intervention. It is easy to say that these Arab countries, like by Saudi Arabia and others, are following the American agenda. This, in fact, is perfect evidence that the Arab disunity is very deep indeed. You always put the blame on outsiders. In Syria, for example, the president of Syria is assuming that the sui generis uprising in his country is the work of outsiders, whether it's the Europeans or the Americans. So therefore, one current in the Arab world is you have this perception, as I said, that Iran is meddling where it does not belong. There is a second line which is very important. That is, most Arab countries are now experiencing very serious economic challenges, the likes of which no Arab country has experienced during the past 50 years. Now, it is very difficult to address some of these issues, the creation of 100 million jobs, so on and so forth, over the next generation. In the absence of a clear economic agenda whereby countries will put their house in order, they are preoccupied by uprisings like the ones that we have seen in Tunisia, in Yemen, in Libya, and now in Syria, and we might see it elsewhere as well. So therefore, if you look at these two currents, what is the League officials who are gathering in Baghdad are able to fathom, to present to their peoples? Are they coming up with concrete solutions to help conditions on the ground? And I'm afraid that when the summit is over, everyone will go home without addressing these two very important core issues.
Let's take the question to Baghdad once again then. Saad Almuttalibi, as we know, Iraq will be heading Arab League mechanisms for the next year. Now, Iraq has taken a different stance from some Arab countries when it comes to dealing with Syria, when it comes to dealing with Iran. How will that impact Arab League initiatives and mechanisms over the next year and the fact that you're leading them?
Well, to be honest, we're not taking a different path. We're taking a very similar path. We're taking the same path.
You're taking a different path from
Kofi
Saudi
Annan
Arabia, aren't you? You're taking a different path than Qatar. I mean, there clearly is a division. You wouldn't deny that there is a division.
We were taking the path of the Arab League. Saudi Arabia does not represent the Arab League. The Arab League has a point, and we think that point is a working point. We think that is a workable approach for the Syrian problem, a workable approach for disarming the area of any mass destruction weapon or nuclear weapon. These are we believe, the way to go ahead in negotiation and widening the field of negotiations so we could address these problems without any direct military conflicts. Iraq, and as our colleague in Kuwait mentioned, he mentioned a lot of perceptions of Iranian intervention, but didn't mention anything about Iraq. Yes, he talked about the spies in Kuwait, which is, I may agree with him. He talked about the intervention in Bahrain and so on, but not in Iraq. Iraq has a different view now. We have a very independent view. We want to keep our independence. We want to have a vision that bring people together and not force them away from us.
Let me bring in Saad Almuttalibi.
The approach is slightly different now.
He's shaking his head. He's already talking. I take it you disagree with the analysis there on Iraq's very independent approach.
I'm not disagreeing, but my viewpoint is there is a major intervention in Iraq by the Iranian. I'm not against Iran, but there are factors. Many Iraqi officials has mentioned that before al-Maliki government has mentioned there is an Iranian interventions. Many visitors, 20% according to a US military senior before he was in the American embassy, 20% of all visitors are belonging to the Revolutionary Guard. We saw some intervention, different intervention in Iraq. The local Iraqi said that. Go to Anbar and north of that, and people will talk about it.
Okay. All right.
If it's a myth, I hope that.
But Mr. Shulemi,
it's not a myth.
Let me get you to talk. Let's switch gears. I'd like to get Mr. Shulemi to talk a little bit on the other issues that were traditionally the most decisive for Arab countries, or the hottest or most pressing problems. Policy towards Israel, is that being put on a back burner now with the Arab Spring and with the concerns about Iran?
I think the policy towards Israel, the Arab are building on their latest initiative. And the words has been said by the Palestinian president today. Israel, there is no doubt, Israel is the major enemy. But when you have a weak government in all Middle East, how can you face your enemy? Example for weak governments. 3 or 4 Arab countries that they are emerging as a transitional government, not a major or a major elected government. 2 of Arab countries having internal dispute among these governments. So how can you face Israel? I think the Middle East is waiting a new baby, and this baby has not come yet. There is a new emerging of governments, of regime. That is one of the major things that weaken Arab relationship.
Okay. As we await this new baby, as we await this new baby, Mr. Kechichian, as we await this new baby that is being spoken about, how are the old alliances faring now after the Arab Spring between those countries that were seen as the moderate camp versus those countries that were seen as the resistance camp? Do we still have that division right now? I mean, what is Egypt's position? Qatar, which used to have good relations with Syria now and a very sort of balanced approach to Iran, its position seems to be changing. Where are we with the pro-moderates versus the pro-resistance?
Right. It's not a question of moderate versus resistance. I think what's happening is that the split that we have is between those who actually want to have dramatic changes in their societies versus those governments that are still holding on to stale and outdated systems of government, which is like the ones that we have seen that have fallen in several Arab countries, and now we are seeing gradually dissolve itself in Syria.
So in other words, you're saying that democracy and human rights and representative government itself, that's becoming a divisive issue amongst different Arab regimes?
Precisely, because I think that democratizing institutions don't exist in the Arab societies in order to allow for democracy to flourish. And certain governments are very much threatened by the changes that are going on all around them. Now, on the other hand, there are a group of leaders in the Arab world. I should not say countries, because we're talking about governments essentially. A group of leaders, whether in Qatar and elsewhere, who are actually able to do things. They want to become active participants. They don't want to just be spectators to global events. And I think that those individuals are increasingly more and more enthused by the changes that are going on within these societies. Of course, this is a double-edged sword. I'm aware of that. The conservative Gulf monarchies have to be very careful to preach about democracy in Syria and not apply it at home. But nevertheless, this division between radicals on the one hand and moderates on the other is on a different level
doesn't hold anymore
now.
Right.
It doesn't hold anymore.
All right, let's take this question back to Baghdad once again. This is really interesting because you have a process, Saad Almuttalibi, for representative government, of course, in Iraq. But at the same time, critics could say you've taken the side of those who are not pro the change sweeping the Arab world. You're still in support of Syria, for example, or supporting Syria more than other countries. How do you respond to that? Where exactly does Iraq sit in that divide between countries which are trying to help and be active participants in democratic change and those are not?
No, we are very clear on this matter. We are with the rights of the people in the region, in the Middle East and in the Arab world, with the rights of the people for self-determination, for democracy, for political improvements. We are with the rights of the people.
How can you be with the right of the people when you obstruct sanctions, for example, on Syria?
No, we're against violence because that sanctions will only hurt the Syrian people. This is a joke because we had sanctions on Iraq and only the Iraqi people were suffering. Saddam Hussein didn't suffer. So we know the sanctions will only hurt the people, and Assad and his family will be probably in London or God knows where, enjoying their benefits. So the idea is that we need to be realistic about changes. We need to be realistic with the people, with the right of the people, and make sure that nobody is armed and that a peaceful change happens in Syria, and the Syrian people has the right to choose their own government.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there.
Not the government to be chosen by Saudi Arabia or Qatar.
Unfortunately, we are out of time, so we're going to have to leave the discussion there for now. Let's thank our guests in Baghdad, Saad Almuttalibi. Almuttalibi, in Kuwait City, Fahad Shulemi, and in Beirut, Joseph Kechichian. And of course, thank you very much for joining us on this edition of Inside Story. As always, if you want to send us your feedback, just email us your thoughts. InsideStory@aljazeera.net is the address you want to keep in mind. Thanks for watching. See you next time.